Every year we hear the financial reports, right, from online people or businesses. How well did they do, right? How much money was spent on Christmas? And for me, like, it's not so much that much money is spent, because it's a huge amount of money. But have you ever thought about the fact that there's one day, like one holiday, where the vast majority of people in the world give gifts to each other? I mean, where else does that happen? Right? What other holiday can say that there's that much gift giving and a sense of generosity? Now, again, not everybody celebrates Christmas. Not everybody is celebrating the birth of Jesus. And not everybody gives gifts like that. And certainly not in the same way. But just think about the people that you know. It's kind of rare, isn't it, for somebody to go, no, I don't give Christmas presents at all. It's rare. So we're into this gift thing, right? And so getting ready for Christmas, I want us to see kind of where does that heart of giving come from? And I know for most of you, I will say this, that I'm sure that your gift giving comes from a really good place, right? You love the people in your life, and you want them to just have this amazing experience. And so, but there are times, right, where we give and the motive isn't as pure. Now, I want you to think, does anybody have to go to like their company Christmas gathering this year? Anybody? Ever had that happen where, you're going to or just going to somebody's house and you know that they're getting you something, and did anyone feel pressure to get something for them? Like, where's the motive for that? Like, that person is probably not on your list. Like, you would not, if you're honest, you would not have even thought about getting that person a gift. And yet, you kind of feel like you got to. Because it's going to be real awkward where they give you something and you're like, oh, I didn't get you anything. And you have to make up, right? We have to make up excuses if that happens. Oh, I left it home. Anyway, I've left gifts home. There's no gift at home. You know it because you didn't think. And it's not that you don't care. But you see, some of it is, well, I've got a list, I've got some people, and they're expecting me to get something, right? Try to not give your kids gifts this year. See how that works. It's about Jesus and forgiveness, but just try that as an experiment. Don't blame me, because it will backfire. It's not going to end well, because we want that experience, and we want that. There's at the Hoover House, there's a long-standing tradition from when our kids were old enough to walk. Before any gifts were opened, the film crew has to set up and get ready to catch that look on their faces when they round the corner and they're heading down the stairs and they get that first look at what's under the tree, because we would never put anything under the tree before Christmas morning. So they go to sleep, it's empty, and they come out and there's all sorts of stuff. And I love that. So we're taking pictures. We got video of what they're just beaming. And as parents, don't you love that? Or when your friend, you give them that gift that you just really thought, oh, this is going to make their day. And we live for that. See, but again, if you look at that, that's kind of a selfish motivation. I'm giving that gift so that I can get a response. Now, I don't think there's anything like really wrong with that, but here's the problem. Is that you often give gifts to people and they're like underwhelmed. Ever happen? Right? I mean, you really thought like this was the most amazing thing. You put so much thought into it because it's the thought that counts, and you gave lots of thought and prayer, and you just thought, man, you spent a lot of money on this, and then the person says, well, I really wanted the green one. And you're like, really? Like, seriously? Like, to me, it calls into question the whole gift thing. Like, do we even get what a gift is? A gift is not something I ask for. It's certainly not something I demand or I should expect. A pure gift, and you know this, that the gifts that have blown you away are the gifts that you did not see coming. Like, you never thought that person would ever buy you anything. And there it is. I think I've told this story before, so if you have heard it before, act surprised. That's the Pastor Hoover rule. But it was one Christmas, And my parents bought us bikes, and they couldn't afford bikes, and I certainly didn't deserve to have a bike, and none of my siblings didn't either. So if they're listening, I'm sorry, but none of us were. We deserved coal, straight up. I mean, that's what we deserved, and nothing more than that. I didn't think we deserved coal because you could burn coal and use it as a useful thing. So we deserve the very least. So my mom had the I'll never forget it. She had those in another part of the house, and she screamed like we were in trouble. And again, Christmas morning, it's like, really, Mom? Like, you're going to yell at us to get in here, and we're in trouble? And we get there, and they're the bikes. Like, to me, that will live on in my heart, like, that's what gifts are all about. Like, I don't deserve it. In fact, I deserve the worst. And that helps me to begin to understand, like, what that gift of Jesus is. I don't deserve it. For me personally, it's come as such a surprise. Because God knows who I am. He knows what I do, right? He knows when I lose it. He knows when I don't have it all figured out, which is most of the time, and I'm just trusting in Him and hoping that I do the right thing, and yet He gives me so much more than I could ever ask for or deserve or merit, right? And none of that. I mean, that's what the gospel is. And I say this because there is such pressure to get it right, to have that heart of generosity, because sometimes we don't feel that way. And in fact, this Hebrew passage that we're going to talk about today, if you got a Bible, turn to that. It'll be up on the screen. Hebrews 10, the verse 5 to 10 comes out of nowhere. I remember when I saw this in the readings for this week, and I was like, wow. I had committed to doing those second readings, right? The epistle readings for all of Advent. And the Philippians ones were great, right? Joy and peace, but then I got to this one, and I'm like, yeah, nothing says Christmas like the blood of bulls and goats. Anybody like finding that card or that Christmassy T-shirt with a blood sacrifice or a burnt offering? See, and my fear is that we'll look at this passage and go, there's no manger in here. There's no prophecy. It's not like the gospel reading that talks about John the Baptist and the baby leaping in her womb and all of that. I mean, that's very Christmassy, but this isn't. This is like Old Testament sacrificial system. I'm like, come on. But it shows us what gifts are about. Because although, and I'd be willing, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Maybe somebody watching online, has done this. But when's the last time you actually had an animal sacrifice? Anybody running those at the house? Right, burnt offerings beyond except for like when I cook, I offer up a lot of burnt offerings. That's a horrible joke. I probably should not say it. My family who's watching at home, like they'll admit, like, yeah, I've offered up a lot of burnt offerings. But not religiously, right? Not in a temple. But we have our own versions of it, don't we? So you can't just skip this passage and go, oh, that doesn't apply to me. I'm not in that Jewish tradition. I'm not. That's not a big issue for me. But the whole heart behind it is, because those folks thought, as we do, that because we do all of our rituals, right, and we go through all of our steps and all the things that we do, we feel like, man, God should just He's got it. I got it coming to me. I deserve to be loved and forgiven. Or maybe the flip side, I don't deserve it, and so I'm going to work like crazy. I'm going to go to church as often as I can. I'm going to pray as often as I can. I'm going to try to do as many good things. But here's the problem with that, is that there'll never be enough. That's the point that the writer of Hebrews is trying to say. But they offered a lot of sacrifices, but every year they had to offer another sacrifice. There'd be another Day of Atonement. There'd be another thing that they would have to do. And here's the thing. When you look at all of the sacrifices, and this is where the sacrifice of Jesus is so different. As Deb said, they're all pointing to something greater. See, when you would go into a Jewish synagogue, and when you would, on that Day of Atonement, when you put that blood of the lamb on the mercy seat, or you offered that whatever that sacrifice was, it wasn't that actual thing that saved you. But we can become convinced of that, can't we? Well, I gave. I did all this. But that doesn't save you, does it? Because if it did, you'd be like, okay, well, then how much should you give? And that never saved us. It was always the mercy of God. It was always his love for us. And that's why the writer of Hebrews says, I'm gonna just want to read verse 4 really quick because I think it's important. He says, it's impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. God takes away sins. God forgives. That is why the people of Israel, when Jesus talked about forgiving sins, they were like, whoa. That's when the gloves came off. And they're like, whoa, because they knew that he was claiming to be God himself, which is exactly who he is. So when he came into the world, as verse 5 says, he was just kind of expressing what's always been the case, that sacrifices and offerings you haven't desired, but a body that you have prepared for me. So here's the thing. Jesus is not just going to point to something. So when we look at Jesus and his death on the cross, it's not like, oh, that reminds me of love. What a picture of grace. No, that is grace. It's the only time in eternity, right? Anything in the past or in the future where this occurs. Everything else is pointing to something else. This is the real deal. This body that God had prepared, this sacrifice he will literally be the sacrifice. He literally paid the price. Because burnt offerings, sin offerings, God didn't take pleasure in those things. But think about that. God would rather have that you didn't need it. Right? And the only way to not need it would be to have a pure heart and a clean heart. But we know that, again, man can't manufacture that. And that's why prophet after prophet, right, talks about God putting Jeremiah, a heart of stone. He takes the heart of stone and puts in a heart of flesh. God has to do that. That's a miracle. It's amazing. And in a season when we talk about Christmas miracles, this is it. That he would come here, take our sins on him. Be the sacrifice. Because Jesus said, I have come to do your will, O God, as is written to me in the scroll. Now he's quoting Psalm 40 there. And then we get a note from the writer of Hebrews. He says, when he said you have neither desired nor taken pleasure in sacrifices or offerings or burnt offerings or sin offerings, he goes, those are offered according to the law. Behold, I've come to do your will. In doing that, he does away with the first order in order to establish the second. Because what you get is empty steps, rituals, traditions, and all those other things. I'm not saying that those things can't be packed with meaning. But what Jesus saw all the time in the very most religious of people was that they thought by doing, right, by offering that sacrifice or doing that thing, that's what saved them. Right, but what did he say all over and over again? He said, but you do all this, but your heart is far from me. Your heart is far from me. He wants our hearts. He wants us to trust him. He wants us to say, Lord, your will be done. That's why we pray that in the Lord's Prayer. It's about our hearts. That's why we want our giving to come from our hearts. Hearts that have been saved, hearts that have been set free, hearts that have been changed by what the writer of Hebrews is going to finish this passage with. See, Jesus comes to do the will of the Father in the garden. Remember that? Lord, not my will. If there's any other way, Father. Right? If I could just not go to this cross, if I could not take the sins of the world, he goes, Lord, I'm open, right? I'm all ears. If we got a plan B, let's do it. But no, but not my will, but yours. He says, Father, I want to go through the fire for them. I want to become sin for them. I want to take all of that on me. That's what makes him a perfect sacrifice. That's what this passage is trying to talk about. Our sacrifices might have some good motives, but it's always mixed. It's never pure. It's never perfect, but his was and is. And so Verse 10, I think, is such a Christmassy passage. Because it says, by that will. In other words, according to that plan. Because of that plan, because Jesus was willing to do what we couldn't do and willing to be who we couldn't be, we have been sanctified. That means you've been made holy. How cool is that? With all the running around that's got to be done, with all the things you got going, with all the pressure, God's saying, look, let me take that pressure off of you and let you know that because Jesus died for you, you are holy and acceptable to me. No more games, no more working it off, no more, oh, if I could just do this or just do that. Maybe this gift will do it. Maybe this gift will make up for who I haven't been and what I haven't done. He's saying, look, no, take that to Jesus. Take that to the cross. He's made you whole. He set you apart. He's made you his child through that offering of the body of Jesus Christ. Again, his death on the cross doesn't point to something else. It is what we need. It's what everything was pointing to. It's him. And it's the three words I want you to say over and over again to yourself this week. It was once for all. Once for all. It's amazing that this entire book of Hebrews, which if you wanted to look at the context is like the whole front end of this book. 9 chapters. We don't have time for 9 chapters. But it boils down to those 3 words, doesn't it? That he did that once and for all. It was all that we need. All that we ever needed was him to die for us, to come here, to be one of us, and to die in our place. See, that's where our giving comes from. See, now I'm free to give a gift. And it doesn't matter how that person responds. It's awesome when they glow, when they go on, when the kids, do that happy dance. But even if they don't, listen to this, that God has an even greater gift for them that will make yours, just blow yours out of the water, and that's good. Because they'll know that he loves them. So let's go after that gift. Let's be generous with that. Let's give of that, his love that he's given to us. In his name, amen.